welcome back to my channel. The regular viewers might know that I really love Hawaii, and not so much for the beach and the ocean, because I'm not really a beach and water fan, but I really like the nature there, the people, the culture, and I've been there now I think 8 or 9 times, I don't know, I lost counting, but it's really for me heaven on earth and I really like it there. And you might know that the traditional Hawaiian dress is a MuuMuu, and it's a dress in a Hawaiian print that is normally rather white with a ruffle on the bottom, and I really like those dresses. And if I would wear them here in my country where it's almost always rainy and cold, I would look really ridiculous, but I love those dresses, I love how it looks, and I decided just to make some. And I of course want to make them out of real Hawaiian material. So I found a fabric store in Honolulu that would ship to my country. So I ordered 3 different fabrics, a pinky one, a white one, and a more dark blue one. And I still have to decide which one I will choose, but I have to do that after this clip because I'm not sure yet which one to pick, because they're all 3 very beautiful. And I did some research on how a traditional MuuMuu should look like, what it should look like, and I was surprised that I found all kind of different patterns, because I thought it was just a white dress with a ruffle on the bottom, but I also found patterns with princess seams and with darts and with zippers, and so I'm not sure if I'm doing the right thing. So if you are a native Hawaiian, please educate me in the comment section. Tell me what a real traditional MuuMuu should look like. I couldn't really find the right one, so I just decided to make a pattern that has the features of most of the patterns, so hopefully that will be the closest to a traditional one. But I'd really like to know if I did the right thing, so I don't want to offend you. So when you are native Hawaiian, please let me know what it should be and what I should look for, or what the features should be of such a dress. Of course, an official Hawaiian fabric with a Hawaiian print, the plumerias and the orchids and all. You should use that. This pink one is polyester cotton, the other 2 is 100% cotton. So I have some different fabrics. This pink one is a little bit more thin, the other one are a little bit more sturdy, so you can use all of them. And well, I will show you what pattern we were gonna make and what kind of dress we're gonna make. So I hope you like it. And here are some pictures of patterns that I found, and you see the MuuMuu dress is really a wide outgoing dress with mostly a ruffle on the bottom. And I really like that blue one with that v-neck, but it is very wide with all the pleats, so I think I'm not gonna make those pleats, but I like that V very much. Same for the 2 dresses on that one picture, really nice with that V part, that shoulder part, but I don't have a matching fabric, so I cannot do that. I will in the future, I think I will make a dress like that with a matching color. Also that left one with the flowers, very beautiful, very nice with that ruffle. And I really like this kind of dresses. So I will show you what I will make for mine. I will show my drawing, how I take a sum of all of these dresses for the dress that we are going to make. So how I'm going to make it? It will be a dress that is going out on the sides, so on an A-line. Then with a big ruffle on the bottom. I make mine almost ankle length, but of course you can make any length that you like. I take that v-neck of that blue dress that has here an overlap. You can also just make a seam here in the mid front that you don't have an overlap. I think I will just, because I'm gonna top stitch it, I will just top stitch it here down, because otherwise it will open up here. But I make that V part, and you see the V part is from the shoulder on. At first I draw one that is just from the middle, but I've made it a lot bigger. I think that looks more nice. That means that the neck hole opening will be a bit wider. Then you see I draw 2 different sleeves, because I'm going to use the 100% cotton and I'm not sure how that will fall. So I will try to make a sleeve like this, because I like that most. A sleeve like this is usually too puffy for me, but I can see which one I will choose. So I'll start with this one. that is a sleeve that is going out a bit more. You will see that when we make the pattern. And it gives a bit of a flow here on the bottom, same as the ruffle there. But it's just a straight on going out in a bit of an A-line sleeve. When this doesn't fall nice because the fabric is too stiff, I can make this sleeve out of it by just putting elastic here on the bottom part, that you get a little bit of a ruffle, and then you get some pleats here. If this also doesn't look right, I can just make the sleeve smaller and then I get a normal short sleeve. So we have 3 options. I didn't draw the third one, but you can do that when you make your sleeve in the beginning rather wide. Then you can just see how your fabrics work with you and what you like on your body. For the back, oh, and also I'm just gonna try to make just very small pleats here on the bottom of my V. I'm not really putting extra fabric on it, because then it will be way too much, way too bulky, because I am very short and that doesn't look nice on me, I know that already. But I make some small pleats. When you are taller, you can certainly make your pattern wider and make here those deep pleats that that blue dress has, because I think that's very, very nice, but it just doesn't look good on me, so I'm not going to do that. And then for the back, I put some dots in the back to give it a little bit of shape from the back, and the rest is just the same sleeves we have to choose. So that will be our pattern. Then for the pattern, I started with my basic pattern for a top or dress, and if you don't have that yet, I will link it down in the description box and here in the upper right corner. And you trace that onto a new piece of paper. So you trace your shoulder, your neck hole, your armhole and your side seam. And then I have to get a ruler. And then what you do, or what I did and what you can do too, is I, instead of using that side seam, I wanted a bit more going out. So I went from the bottom of my armhole, I went a bit out. And you make it as wide as you like. I don't want it too wide, but you can also make it like this, of course. Just whatever you like, and just go all the way down to the length of your dress that you want it to be. Then I wanted to have that V, and what I did, I first cut a piece of paper that will be the pattern for my V part, and I just watched how I want this to be and this to be, or a bit ripped off. This should be a straight line here. So I just wanted to know how I want this to be. And then I put my pattern away. I marked where I want my cut line to be, and I marked it on my paper, and then you will have something like this. And I hope I make sense, but you can see, hopefully, that the V part will be a bit of the top of your armhole and your whole shoulder. So your shoulder will now be smaller than your basic pattern was. You see that? Your shoulder should end here, now it ends here, and your armhole for your pattern, for your bodice, will start here. So I took this part off. You see that? I'll trace a line, maybe you can see. No, I don't think you can see it, but this is the part where I cut this part off. And then you have your new pattern. The part that I cut, the paper that I cut off for my V, it should be on the fold here, because I want this to be double. And I'm always not sure how I need to cut the bottom, because I really don't know how to measure how this curve will be. So I think this will be a bit more going up, but I always cut on my pattern, but also on my fabric, just some more that I can just take whatever I need to get this corner nice and straight into my V that I will creating. So make sure you have enough pattern, but certainly enough fabric when you cut it out, that you can move a little bit with this length, because it's depending on if your curve, I think the curve will be like this, so I should have cut it off like this, but if it's a little bit more like this, then you will have too little, so always cut enough on. So this will be your V part on the fold here, and that will be connected here to your bodice part. Then I draw the dart for the back on here, but this is the front, so this wasn't necessary. And then for the back you will just do the same, but the only difference is your shoulder has changed, because we made here the shoulder smaller. I made mine 8 centimeters, so this whole part is 8 centimeters. So mark on your new piece of paper that your shoulder has now for the back the same width as your shoulder for the front. So mine is now 8 centimeters, and I made it here for that a little bit lower, because normally you would have this curve like this. And then same, the side seam going out, you can do that by putting your front pattern on top of the paper for your back pattern, and mark your dart. And then for the back we will finish here the neck hole with a facing. So I already marked on my pattern how big I want my facing to be. So this is 4 centimeters, and I cut that out on a new piece of paper so that it is easier to cut it out of your fabric. So that will be your facing part for the back. Then we will need our sleeves. And for the sleeves you will need your basic pattern for a sleeve, or you can use what I'm gonna do, your sleeve pattern that you used for the Kate Middleton dress, because I made that out of this one. I made it by flaring this one out, but you can also just eyeball it, and it means that, I'll put it on top of it and you can maybe see it better. That means that what I did is I made the head of my sleeve a lot shorter, lower, so it's around 4.5 centimeters lower for the new sleeve. And that means that the curve of my sleeve will be smaller, but because it has to be the same as the opening of the armhole, I have to elongate my sleeve. And that's the same as when you take your pattern and you flare it out to give it more width, and your sleeve will open up more, and then you get more here on the top of your sleeve, but also on the bottom of your sleeve. So if you want to eyeball it, just take your measuring tape, measure how big your armhole is as you did for making your basic pattern, and make sure that this whole curve is exactly the same as the opening of your armhole. And then you don't have to do really the flaring out, because that is quite a lot of work and taping and things. So you can just eyeball it, as long as you make sure that the width of your sleeve, the head of your sleeve, is the same as the width of your armhole. Then what I did for the Kate Middleton dress, I made the bottom of my sleeve rounded. That happened to be not really nice when I put it into the dress, so I ended up cutting the sleeve just straight on. Now I'm going a bit in between and see how it looks, how it fits with this fabric, because it's always also depending on the fabric how a pattern looks like that. So you can make your sleeve like this. If you're not sure, just watch my Kate Middleton dress video. I will link it in the description box if you haven't done that before, if you really want to know how to make a sleeve like you should do. So this is the sleeve that we're going to use. I make it a little bit longer here because I want to be able to put an elastic and get a little bit of ruffle on the hemline if I want to. And then the only thing you need is the ruffle for the bottom, but I will show you when I show my fabric pieces. Then I have my fabric pieces, my front pattern with the two V parts that we have to connect to that. Then I have my back part with my facing already cut down to finish the back neck hole. Then I have two sleeves, and just see what we're going to do with that. And then I have 4 pieces for my ruffle. And I must say, when I started cutting, I noticed that the measurements of the American fabrics are way different than the fabrics in my country. In my country, the fabrics are always 150 centimeters wide, so doubled up 75 centimeters. But these fabrics were only 112 centimeters wide, so they are smaller than the fabrics in my country. Luckily I had enough to make this. Gladly I didn't want to make a wider dress, because then I wouldn't have enough fabric, because I didn't know that. So when you buy fabric from another country, make sure that you check what the measurements are, because it's very sad when you have too little fabric. Now I made these ruffles that are 112 centimeters wide, so the whole width of the fabric, and 20 centimeters high, plus seam allowance. And I have 4 of them, so I'm gonna attach them all 4, ruffle them up and put them on the bottom of our dress. So those are the pieces that you will need. So on each side of the mid front I made 2 very small pleats. You see here 2, the other side has also 2. Together it's just 1 centimeter, so it's less than I added here to my side seam, so I can use that here just for some nice embellishments. And then I pinned the side here of that V part onto that seam here from the V of the front pattern, and I marked here exactly where the mid is for my bodice, because here I have to turn this when I sew it on to put this side there, and I cannot show you now because this is pinned, but it will be like this. And then the next step will be to attach the left part, and that will be underneath this. And now, because I could turn this down, I could make the right angle here for the end. I had cut on quite a bit, but now I can see how my corner has to be here, and I cut it off. So I'm gonna sew this part on, then while sewing flip this over to that side, and you can very easily do that when you are here at the mid front. Put your needle in and put the pressure foot up, and then you can just flip the whole thing over, and you can sew this part, so that will be this part, onto here, and then I'll come back to show you how to do the second part. Side is on. You see you get a really nice sharp V here. You see the little pleats, gives a little bit of movement here. They're just really small, but you see that it gives a little bit of flowiness here around the V, otherwise it's just straight and that's pretty boring. So now we're going to put on the other side, and that goes underneath this one. So you just sew that one onto your seam allowance on the other side. And then you can also attach, flip to the other side, you can attach here the end of the left part here to the seam allowance, where you just attach the right part of the V. I'm gonna top stitch this whole inside seam. I'm not gonna do the outside yet. I just do that when I have attached the back part, the back bodice and the back facing, then I can do that in one row, and maybe also stitch down this part. I can try it on then and see if I need this movement to get my head through, but I think it will be big enough. But now I'm gonna top stitch here this whole inner part, inner seam. We have a nice V here in the front. Now we're going to connect the back parts to it, and watch that this is already finished, but the inside of the back pattern not. So the neck hole not. So when you put the shoulder seams together, you have a piece of seam allowance here left on the inside, because that's where we are going to attach the facing. You can also do the facing first, but I always like to line it up when I have already sewn my shoulder seam. So I'm going to do that first, and you see when I pin that down, I think you see I have here my 1 centimeter of seam allowance left where I can put my facing on, and then it's really nicely lined up here with my outside of my V. So we're going to do the shoulder seams. Then you can also sew both of your side seams just straight on, and if you want to make pockets you can do that now. I won't, because I'm not really a fan of pockets in every garment that I have, because I think often it takes away the look and the fall of the dress. So I'm not making pockets, but if you want to make pockets, I have a sewing class on how to make pockets in side seams. It's very easy to do, very simple, so I will link the sewing class down in the description box and here in the upper right corner, so you can make those pockets if you like to. I will just sew down my side seams. Oh, and of course also do that first or later on, sew your darts in the back. I will do that afterwards, because then I can see if I want to make my darts maybe even bigger than they are now. I have now just the regular darts, but maybe because this is a very wide dress I want to make it more. So I'm going to do first the side seams, and then make my darts to whatever I need. Tried the dress on and it fitted very nicely. I love the small pleats that are made here in the front, just a centimeter on either side, but it gives a little bit more of a flow in the front than when you have just your fabric going straight on. So I'm very happy with that. It's just a small detail. Then the darts in the back, I made them at the waist a centimeter bigger, because it doesn't give a lot of shape, but it gives just a little bit of a curve, so that it's not such a bulky thing. That means that my darts were pretty bulky here at the waistline, so I made them also a little bit longer, especially to the top part. Now mine are here, I think around 3 centimeters at the waist, so it's quite a lot. So when you do that too, make sure you iron them very well open, because otherwise you will get what you see now. You get a pleat that's going all the way up to your shoulder seam. That's not nice. So make sure that you iron them down very good. And also you might need to cut this off, so that you have just a very small seam allowance. What we normally don't do with darts, but when you have such a big dart, normally it's nicer when you can iron them open, so then you have to cut this part open. So I'm gonna sew my darts now down. Now we're going to put our facing to the neck, back neck hole, and make sure that you line the seam here exactly up with where your front V ends or starts, so that you have a continuous line here when you put your facing inside to the inside. That is nice, an ongoing line. So pin that to the neck hole and then sew that down, and then finish the outer edge of your facing and here at the shoulder seams, and sew it on the inside with a hand stitch to the seam allowance of your shoulder seam. So I made snips in the seam allowance here, and then I pressed the facing down very nicely, that is nice and crisp. And then I'm gonna top stitch here the edge of the facing, and I'm gonna hand sew the facing here to my shoulder seam. I put a pin already in here. I was planning on also top stitching here the front edge, but I'm not going to do it because this is just 100% cotton. When you press it down, it will stay put very nicely. The seam is very crisp, so I'm not going to top stitch that. You might know I'm not really a fan of top stitching. Sometimes you need it, sometimes it's nice, but I think for now the top stitching here is enough, and I don't do that. Just here the edge of my facing part. As you saw, I already closed up the sleeve seam, this little part. Then I pinned in one sleeve to see how it looked and what I could do with it. So I pinned it in, and I think it looked really nice just the way the sleeve is. I think I will just sew it in on both sides and then finish it later on with just a very small walled hem that I do on my serger, that gives a very tight sort of zigzag on the bottom of the sleeve, and I hope that it will then fall like this, really nice and flowy. If not, then I can just make a normal hem out of it and even make it a little bit tighter if I want to, because as I already thought, the fabric is water stiff, so it doesn't feel that flowy as the normal chiffons and viscoses that I use. But I think it looked really nice to start with now, so I'm gonna sew in both my sleeves. What you do, I have put my dress one side out. Then you mark the middle of your sleeve just by folding it doubled on the seam, and then place a pin here on the mid of your sleeve. Line that up with your shoulder seam. Line up the side seam of your dress with your sleeve seam, and of course you make sure that you have right sides together. So this is the outside of my dress, this is the inside, and this is the inside of my dress, this is the outside, this is the outside of my sleeve, so both the outsides are matching up, are touching. So you match up the sleeve seam and the side seam, and then you distribute this whole piece of your sleeve into that armhole all the way around, and then sew both all the way around. Are nicely in. I'm gonna hem them later, and now we're gonna work on the ruffle. And what we will do, we will connect all these four pieces at the short seam, so the short seam will be connected. Then you have one big circle, Then what I will do is I will finish the top line of that whole circle and then sew 2 rows of basting stitches so that we can gather them around that. And I think I will attach the ruffle with an upstanding piece. So that means that I will hem them first and then put the gatherings in so that I can stitch here so that the top part of the ruffle will be loose, will be standing up. So I'll put them on top of the bottom of the skirt, attaching it here around a centimeter from the top half, 1.5 centimeters from the edge, and then you have this top part of your ruffle standing out. And I think that I like that more than sewing it on. And also when you put the ruffle on top of the bottom of the dress will get taken in a bit, not smaller, but it will not stand out. When you put the ruffle underneath the bottom of the dress will go out, and then getting the ruffle, when you put it on top of it, the dress will go more in, and then the ruffle will be on top of the dress. And I think that makes it look a bit less bulky, because the dress won't be not that standing out like that, but just flowing in, and then the ruffle will be more wider than the rest of the dress. What I did, I folded in my ruffle 2.5 centimeters, and I marked 1 centimeter here from the edge with pins where I want my stitching to be when I attach it to my dress. Then I made a basting stitch on top of that pin and below that pin. We're gonna gather that, so I'm gonna pull on the edges of that basting stitch, and I made every quarter their own basting stitch, because when you pull on it and your thread breaks, then you have to do the whole circle again, and now you only have to do that quarter. And it sometimes just happens, especially with this fabric, I notice now, because the fabric is more stiff, it's more difficult to pull on the threads to gather it. And I made 2 basting stitches, because then you get your gatherings more nicely like this. Otherwise it will be possible that you have a lot of gatherings here on top and not more below, and then when you put your stitching, it sometimes is not that nicely even distributed along the fabric. So I made 2, and when I have sewn it down where the pins are, then I'm going to take all those gathering stitches out, and then you have nice stitching here where you attached it to the dress. And you do that just, I also made my dress in quarters, so the side seams and the mid front and mid back. And then I will put my ruffle on top of it. It's a lot of ruffle. I'm doubting if it's not maybe too much, but we'll see when I pin it on. And then I will place my my ruffle on top of my dress, 2 centimeters from the edge, and then I can make my stitching nicely here where my pins are, and that's 1 centimeter from the edge of my ruffle. And then you have nice overlap, it's nicely attached here, and then you have your 1 centimeter on top of your ruffle. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to gather this all in, then pin it onto the dress, and then sew it down. So I'm not gonna, you saw I already finished the bottom of my dress, because I'm not gonna put them together and then finish it. This is already finished, this is already finished, and I'm just gonna place the ruffle on top of the dress. I pinned the whole ruffle on, and it's a lot of fabric. I really had to scrunch in all the fabric as much as I could along the basting stitches, because it was really a lot of fabric. But you see now I put it on top of it. I will stitch it on here between the 2 basting stitches, and I will take the basting stitches out. Then you get more of a flow on your ruffle part. So that's the next step. So I attached my ruffle, and you see the fabric is really packed on, and I like that very much how that looks. I took out the basting stitches on the top and the bottom of, or below and above the stitching where I attached the ruffle, and that was quite a struggle because of this fabric is now so packed on that when you pull on the threads, normally a basting stitch you can just pull out. But now the thread breaks very easily because all the fabric that is keeping it together. So I had to put a needle underneath the stitching and then pull it up and then take it out bit by bit. And it was quite a struggle, but because it was 9 meters of basting stitch that I had to remove. But I think it looks way nicer when you just have your attaching stitching here and you see all the little pleats here. I think it looks very nice. So now we're gonna hem the bottom of the ruffle. And I will just do that by making a very small hem, just folding it in about 3/4 centimeters, and then again 3/4 centimeters, and hemming that down. And for the sleeves, as I said, I will make a rolled hem with my serger, and that means that it makes a rolled hem that is like a very tight sort of zigzag stitch, very small. And I put my differential settings on 0.7, and that makes that the front transporter makes a smaller circle than the back transporter, and then you get a little bit of how do I call it, a wave into your stitching. It's not really much. It's not like a lattice hem that you can do on a stretchy fabric, but it gives a little bit of a wave and not just a straight on rolled hem. And I think that looks very nice. I hope it will work well with this water sturdy fabric, but I think it always will be a little bit more nice than when you just make a normal rolled hem stitching. If you don't have a serger to make a rolled hem, you can also just make a very small rolled hem with your sewing machine, or do a very tight small zigzag stitch as finishing of your edges. That's very nice too. And then you have a nice result for finishing your sleeve hem. So we're going to do that, and then the dress is finished. Yes, then the dress is finished. And this to me is the ultimate dress. I really like these dresses, the nice print, the loose and flowiness, the big ruffle on the bottom, and I could wear these dresses all day. I really like them. And I know for my country it is not really suitable, but nevertheless I just like them. So I had to make one, and I will for sure make 2 or 3, maybe even more, because it is really nice, and not only for the holiday but just for every day. It's just the ultimate dress to have and to wear. And if you want to give it a little bit more shape, you can just put a belt on, and then you get a nice waist definition, and it is more fitted to your body. But then again, you miss that loose flowiness that you have when you wear it just loose, as in my opinion most muumuus are. And that's why I was surprised that I found a lot of patterns for muumuus with princess seams and with darts in the front. I only now have the darts in the back, and I think that is way more than enough to give it a bit of shape in the back. Because you may see when I move, you can see that I have a waist here, although it is loose and flowy, because it will just cinch in when you move, and then you see that you're not really that bulky underneath. But even if you are, I think it is just a really flattering dress to wear, whatever body type you have, and I really like it. I love that big ruffle on the bottom. I will give a close-up later on. You can see how much that is gathered in, and it gives a really nice edge on the ruffle. So, and halfway or almost at the end of the process, my sewing machine broke, and I had mine for almost 20 years. Next month it will be 20 years, and I had bought it second hand. So it really had done a great job, because I make miles and miles every week, every year, and 20 years bought second hand is really a good job. So I had to buy a new one. I always have to get adjusted to new machines, because I'm really bad with all technical things, and phones and laptops and sewing machines and sergers, and I'm not good at it. So I have now one with to me, very new features. It cuts off the thread when I'm done automatically. I don't know how that can be, so I don't have to take scissors and all kind of things that I'm not used to, but are really nice to have, I think. But I had to get used to, so my sewing will be a little slower now, because I don't know really how my new sewing machine works. I hope you like this video. I'm not sure how many people will love to make such a dress, because it's for most people just for vacation or when they are on Hawaii, but I just love them. So I hope you liked it. If anything was not clear, leave a comment down in the description box, and I will get back to you to explain more. Or if you have anything to say or to comment, I always like to read your comments, and I'll get back to you always. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!